This message has no affiliation with the Department of War. Good evening, everyone. Stay with us today as we go over the dangers of the LGBTQ plus community, Part 2, the government shutdown, and my thoughts on one of the questions that you all asked during this week. This is the Martin Memo. The Martin Memo. All right, welcome in, everyone, and what a productive week it has been. We were able to do another podcast on top of the two that we already do. I was able to buy some merchandise for the Martin Memo, and we hit over 150 subscribers on the week. This has been a historic week here for the Martin Memo, and we only hope to continue to grow this movement. Now, before we begin, I want to go over a bit of the background behind this entire thing. The trans and queer movement emerged from the broader LGBTQ plus rights movement in the late 20th century, building on milestones like the Stonewall riots in 1969. Initially, it focused on ending discrimination against those who didn't fit the traditional gender norms or sexual orientations. But over the past decade, it has evolved, or some say radicalized, into something that's more aggressive. Often labeled gender ideology, this shift emphasizes that gender is fluid, detached from biology, and that anyone can identify as any gender that they please, which we all know is wrong. There is man, there is woman. There are males, there are females. There's no in-between. There's none of that nonsense that the left and the media keep trying to peddle. I argue this ideology is riddled with contradictions. For instance, it claims gender is a social construct while insisting on medical intervention to align bodies with identities. One trans individual even warned that the community's liberal tactics are jeopardizing hard-won rights. In the U.S., this has played out in laws, schools, and culture, leading to what some call as a fast track to failure for the movement itself. So why? Why is this happening? It's because when activism prioritizes extremes over evidence, it alienates the public and invites backlash. Support for transgender rights has dipped, as a matter of fact, in recent years, even as acceptance of gay rights rises. 2/3 of Americans now favor restrictions like requiring trans athletes to compete based on their birth sex, based on what they should be. This isn't hatred. It is just a reaction to perceived overreach. Now let's zoom in on one of the most alarming areas, and that is the impact on the kids, like I mentioned in the last episode. Gender ideology has infiltrated our schools and medicine, promoting the idea that children can know their true gender early on and show transition if they express confusion. But experts warn this harms children in profound ways. Here's a question before I move forward. Whatever happened to tomboys? You know, the girls that were a little boyish, if you will. They like sports. They loved mudding. They loved different things like that. Whatever happened to that? Now it's just, hey, we're going to cut off your breasts and you're officially a male now. No, that's not the right answer. Medically, gender-affirming care for minors, which includes puberty blockers, hormones, and surgeries, this carries irreversible risks. Puberty blockers, often prescribed off-label, can lead to bone density loss, infertility, and stunted growth. Cross-sex hormones increase risks of heart disease, blood clots, and cancer. And what about surgeries? We're talking mastectomies on teens as young as 13. They're not going to tell you this, but this is the hard reality that is plaguing our nation. And on top of all of this, there's no long-term data on regret rates, which some studies suggest could be as high as 20 to 30% of adults. That is a very high number. The American College of Pediatrics has called gender ideology harmful to children, arguing it confuses natural development, which of course is true. In Europe, countries like Sweden and Finland have halted or restricted these treatments for minors after reviews found weak evidence of benefits. Yet, in the U.S., bills like the Equality Act could mandate such care nationwide, overriding parental rights and exposing kids to experimental procedures. We're already seeing this in states like California, states like New Jersey, states like Minnesota. This is coming to America, and it is coming very quickly. There now have been therapists who testify that the field is causing harm by rushing kids into transitions without addressing underlying issues like autism, trauma, or social pressures. Educationally, public schools are ground zero. Unfortunately, now the curriculum within these schools are pushing gender fluidity from kindergarten, teaching kids they can be non-binary or change genders. This undermines families of faith or those who value biological reality. But we are starting to see it slow down, at least for now. The Trump administration recently notified states to remove gender ideology from sex ed, citing risk to child autonomy. These aren't fringe views. They reflect growing parental outrage within America. Shifting gears, let's talk about women now. The trans movement claims to advance equality, but it undermines women's hard-fought gains. At its core, if anyone can self-identify as a woman, what does a woman even mean? This erodes sex-based rights. Sports is a flashpoint. Trans women, biological males, competing in female categories have advantages in strength and speed. This is basic human autonomy, leading to unfair outcomes and even some injuries like Riley Gaines. But what about prisons and shelters? Trans women in female facilities have led to assaults. In California, a trans inmate raped multiple women after a transfer. This prioritizes gender identity over women's safety. I would almost argue that the movement's push reframes feminism as trans exclusionary if it defends female-only spaces. So now beyond the specifics, the movement's tactics are uneasy. Activists, including myself, are labeled transphobes, leading to cancellations, job losses, and threats. Now, I may not agree with most of what she says, but even J.K. Rowling faced death threats for questioning gender ideology. And this is from one of the most distinguished authors you could argue of all time. And it's not like she said, we need to stop all the trans movements, we need to do all this. She just pushed back a little bit, and that's the hate that she received. The other part I want to get into today is the mental health aspect of it all. Mental health in the community is a concern too. High suicide rates are often blamed on society, but I believe that ideology exacerbates distress by promising unattainable changes. In fact, 80% of trans individuals considered committing suicide. 40% attempted to commit suicide. Those are staggering, sad numbers to see. And I don't think that it's on society for not accepting them or anything like that. I think that they have a deep down darkness, a deep hole that they cannot fill, and these people keep lying to them, saying, hey, pump yourself full of these drugs, hey, cut off pieces of your body or add pieces of your body, but they're not addressing the root issue, and it is a self-esteem issue. Or it's an issue to fit into today's current climate. You are achieving something that is unattainable. If you are a man, you cannot become a woman, and vice versa. And this lie that they keep pushing, saying, "Hey, you can become a woman, or you can become a man." That's just not true. That is not the case. You are ignoring God, and you're ignoring basic biology. So now we have to move into what is the way forward. Evidence-based policies, open debate, and separating the LGBT rights from extreme ideology like the T's and the Q's. It is time to walk away from extremists. While born from a quest for equality, the trans and queer movement's current form possesses dangers, medical risks to kids, erosion of women's rights, suppression of speech, and social division. It is time for an honest reckoning. Moving on, the ongoing U.S. government shutdown is now the longest in history. This has been happening since October 1st, 2025, which is squarely the Democrats' fault. With Republicans controlling the House, the Senate, and the White House, funding bills have passed the House 15 times, but Senate Democrats are filibustering, refusing the 7 votes needed for the 60-vote threshold to reopen. They are holding Americans hostage, denying SNAP benefits to millions, including kids and veterans, over political leverage on issues like healthcare and RIFs. Polls blaming Republicans ignore the reality. Now let's look at the facts. The ACA was supposed to make healthcare cheaper through subsidies that lowered monthly premiums. Everyone knows that. Those subsidies were always meant to be temporary. They were supposed to expire in 2022, but they were extended because of COVID until now. So because they are set to expire, premiums are going to go up, but not like the 200 to 300% like they keep suggesting. It's only supposed to double. And I know that still sounds like a lot, and it is a lot, but it's not nearly as bad as they keep making it out to be. These insurance companies have already priced in their plans expecting these subsidies to expire. The people that are most affected by the expiring are the people that are making over 400% the federal poverty line. Now, let me be honest. I don't think that this is fair. Our healthcare system needs help. But I will say it is misleading. It is not right to point your finger at one party when you could argue both are at fault. Additionally, these subsidies hurt people more because when the government is footing the bill, then the pharmaceutical companies will just keep raising the prices, and we've already seen that across the board. Overall, we need to fix the system. Now that brings us to my favorite segment of the week, and that is the cold monologue. For those of you who do not know what the cold monologue is, you ask us questions throughout the week. My editor-in-chief writes it on slips of paper. She puts it in this hat. I have no prior knowledge on these questions, so you are getting my pure, authentic reaction. Oh, this is a good one. Who do you think the next president and vice president is going to be, and who do you think the nominees will be from each party? This is great. I see the Democrat Party going increasingly to the left. I think that they are going to go down that rabbit hole. I believe that the next nominee of the Democrat Party is going to be someone like AOC, and I believe the counterpart is going to be someone moderate, like maybe a Gavin Newsom, even though he's really not moderate. But just for an example, as of right now, as it stands, I can really see an AOC type ticket. I really could. I know that is a very hot take, if you will, but I think AOC is going to be the person that ends up getting the Democrat vote along with someone like Gavin Newsom. I know a lot of people are saying Gavin Newsom is going to be the next nominee. I really don't see it because I don't think he is radical enough for the base, and he is a white male, and they keep preaching DEI, diversity, all these different things. So I can really see from the Democrat side it being AOC with maybe a vice president like Gavin Newsom. On the Republican side, I could see, as long as things go well, assume everything stays to the plan, there's no big major economic overturn or big pandemic again or anything like that, I could really see it being J.D. Vance. I think he has all the momentum, and he has been doing a phenomenal job as vice president alongside a Marco Rubio or a Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida. I really could see that happening. I think it's probably going to end up being AOC, Gavin Newsom versus a J.D. Vance and a Marco Rubio. And the winner will be, in my opinion, if things play out how they are right now, it's going to be a J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio White House for 2028. So that is my take on who our next president and vice president will be. With that all being said, well, folks, that is all we have in store for today. Join us on Tuesday as we interview another surprise guest. Share your thoughts on X, follow us on Instagram and Facebook at The Martin Memo, and don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. Now, in case I don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night. This is The Martin Memo. The Martin Memo.